Hey, you all ready? Regular expressions. Okay, so let's talk about regular expressions. So we see here's a whole bunch of examples of regular expressions. We'll get to them. We'll come back to these in a second. But let's talk about the main things that we have for a regular expression are individual characters. And so individual characters, these represent elements in our alphabet. So we talked about sigma the other day. So the elements of sigma are going to be our characters in there. We'll also have the empty string, but the empty string will occur very sparingly. You really only want to use the empty string to note that a regular expression could contain nothing, could accept the nothing element. And we'll see some examples of that. You can also have regular expressions can be next to other regular expressions, and characters can be next to other characters. Regular expressions and characters can be separated by pipes, which are those vertical bars. You all know where those live on your keyboard, so I don't have to show you like I have to show my intro students. You remember the day in intro where I'm physically showing everyone where it is on there. And then regular expressions can have, I almost told you no food in the Keck lab, but we're not in the Keck lab. So. And they can also have the Keen star, which would denote 0 or more iterations of a particular regular expression. And then they can have parentheses in order to avoid ambiguity. So let's get some simple regular expressions that are going on here. So I can have a regular expression, and let's say I have I'll make a regular expression single character. Single character. So I'm going to make a regular expression that'll hold a single character. And what can be in here is A, or B, or C, or D, or E, or F, or G, or H, or I, or J, or K, or L. I'm not dotting this. Or L, or M, or N, or O, P, Q, R. You messed me up. D, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. One person laughed at that. I'm very disappointed.
You put and in.
I did. Thank you. Anyways, single character. So this is a regular expression. Single character becomes one of those. So when I talk about elements here, if I look at just the regular expression single character, there. This is a single character. That's a single character, and so on. What is not a single character? Yeah. So what I want to do now is I want to make a regular expression for a word. Well, what is a word, really? A word is a collection of single characters. How would I write that? A word, do words have to contain one character? Would you argue that it's not a word if it's an empty string? I think that seems a reasonable constraint. And so this gets to, the reason why I mention this is Keen star is 0 or more iterations of a regular expression. So you see, you have this temptation like, oh, a word is a single character repeated as many times as you want to. This is not quite correct. This does allow for AB. This allows for A. It allows for alphabet, which is kind of funny. Not that funny, just a little. It allows for any combination of those. So 0 or more repetitions of a single character. Everyone on the trolley with that one? By the way, I don't think I'm going to say on the trolley next year. I'll come up with a new phrase. Jesse, during his presentation, said everyone on the tugboat. And I'm like, that's too long. Anyways, single character, 0 more repetitions of it. Also included in here is the empty string. That I would argue that is not a word, because a word must contain at least 1 character. So if I would like to fix this, what I can do is like so. Now, a word is 0 or more repetitions of a single character, followed by a single character. This guarantees that I will always have at least 1 character in my word. So it gets rid of this. But it still allows for A, B, C, because what happens in here is this has 0 or more repetitions of a single character, followed by a single character. This is an important part about epsilon, is that you can view this as epsilon A, because that is the empty string followed by A. Well, the empty string goes away unless it's the only thing in there, so it's really A. This is what's hard about the epsilon, is that it goes away unless it's the only thing by itself. So if it's the only thing there, then it lives, but it goes away all of the other times.
So when you do repetitions of a single character, does that, you have to choose the same single character each time?
Any character. It's anything that's in here 0 or more times. That's an excellent question. And that's why I can have A, B, C. Or A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. I don't need to write all of that out. But this is a word as well. 0 or more repetitions of a single character. Everyone cool with that? What questions do you all got about that?
If there are epsilons interspersed in between those, do they just all disappear then?
Yes. Yeah. Now there would not be an epsilon interspersed within here because there's no epsilon in here, this only becomes an epsilon if there's 0 of them. So. Everyone all right with that? You will see as a shorthand notation as well, some people will also include an epsilon and things like this. That does nothing really in this case. But we'll see some other cases where you want to say basically a regular expression could disappear entirely. It can either be there or not. But you don't want to allow for 0 or more repetitions of it. So for example, if you were talking about if statements, so you could have an else. So if we're talking about, let's make a regular expression for an if statement. And so we'll say, if statement is the word if followed by, it could be if, and it could be followed by another regular expression that we'll call optional else. And optional else can be either the word else or an epsilon. And so you will see this notation from time to time. Now, I'll underline the regular expressions here. And I'll put, for clarity, quotes around the characters. So my sigma in here is equal to if else.
So the quotations are characters.
Yeah. And you wouldn't normally put them in characters. I'm just doing that because normally what you do is you write you can see it here. What you normally do is you write regular expressions in italicized format if you're typing them out, and you write those in typewriter format or monospace to differentiate between regular expressions and actual characters. The regular expression is basically, it's like a function, only the function maps to some element in there. A function is really a gross misrepresentation of it, but it's not a bad way to think about it. They're often called variables as well. So if we look at this, here's an example of, I got a digit, 0 through 9. Non-zero digit, 1 through 9. Natural numbers are non-zero digits followed by one or more digits. Note there's parentheses in here. Parentheses are often used to denote order of operations. It's not a symbol unless it's specifically stated that. It's used to denote do that first. I don't need the parentheses here, but I put them in for clarity so you knew the star only applied to digit. And I'll often put parentheses in there to try and make life a lot easier for you. Now we get to something more interesting, non-negative numbers. Non-negative numbers are 0 or a natural number, followed by, parentheses, a decimal point, followed by 0 or more digits, concluded by a non-zero digit, or epsilon. So, let's go through. Do you guys mind if I erase this? All my hard work. Writing out the outline. My son is having, we talk about what letters start with B. So he knows boy starts with B and Adam starts with A. He's like, what letter do I start with? And I'm like, well, when you're Adam, you're an A. When you're a boy, you're B. He's like, you're speaking riddles, old man. So, what are some non-negative numbers? So let's start with the easiest non-negative number, 0. So, non-negative number is either 0 or that. Well, 0, yay! So it's that left-hand side of it. On the other hand, it's either decimal, digit, blah, 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 or nothing. And so that's how this breaks down. This is a non-zero digit because it can be represented by 0, and I'll just write the part that's relevant. 0 or not that, combined with not that or epsilon. Everyone cool with that? Alternatively, I could have 0.1. This is 0 combined with decimal, 0 or more digits, in this case 0 digits, followed by a non-zero digit, which is 1. It could also be 0.01, which is 0 followed by point, and then 0 or more digits. Again, 0 is included in those digits, concluded by a 1. 0.3341. 0.334. Those are the digits, concluded by a 1 again. Notice that when we're talking about numbers after the decimal, the last digit here is always a non-zero digit. Because when we're talking about, unless you're a sig figs fan, I know everyone in here is all about the sig figs. The last number you write on a non-zero on a decimal is always a non-zero number. The only exception to this is when you care about significant figures. But no one really cares about that. Sorry, physicists. So, does that make sense why it's defined this way? Alternatively, when you're talking about natural numbers, they always begin with a digit. You don't write 3 out by saying 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 3. Just say 3. So natural numbers always begin with a non-zero digit. Decimals always end with a non-zero digit. Alternatively, they can have zeros preceding, after the 3. So I can have 3, 0, 0. That's perfectly fine. Or I can have 0, 0, 3. Anyone on the tugboat with that? I was told by some of my intro students who are friends with my with upper level CS students that some of you all are adopting my ridiculous phrases in conversation, and I feel very happy about this. I don't know if you're adopting it or you just don't naturally make references to Adventure Time and Futurama on your own, but either way.
The numbers.
Oh, you pick the numbers out all the time too? If I've done one thing, you know 1138 is something to do with George Lucas.
It's a good movie.
I've never actually seen that movie.
It's a good movie. You should see it.
You don't need to ever see it. You just need to know it has something to do with George Lucas. THX 1138. Yeah. American Graffiti was his first really, really successful movie. Been up for a long time. It was the had the highest profit to investment ratio, and it stars Harrison Ford as a drifter. It's really funny. You're like, you're Han Solo, and you're just kind of a loser in this movie. In all fairness, Han Solo was kind of a loser until he met Luke Skywalker.
It's just space drifter.
Yeah, like what had he done? He scammed someone out of the Millennium Falcon. Like that was his lifetime achievement.
He was a stormtrooper.
Was he?
No.
Wait.
Yeah.
I faked it.
The extended canon?
That's Stormtrooper.
Yes.
They shoved in a million.
Oh, I don't count
years.
those. I also don't count the first trilogy as part of canon. I choose to. I choose to believe that doesn't exist. Anyways, so we can talk more about Star Wars later when we're not being recorded. And though it was funny during Kramer's honors thesis, we had people in there who weren't CS people, and we were discussing the differences between Howl's Moving Castle, the anime, versus the book. And like everyone in the room had a thought on this. And they were like, wow, what is this how CS classes begin? I'm like, generally this is a major part of CS class, of discussing how anime compares to the original novel that it comes from.
Isn't it like a British novel that converted into language? It was like there was like 3 different processes of conversion.
There might be.
It's literally nothing the same.
They involve the same characters, and they're entirely different from that point on. And there's a moving castle in both of them.
Any of this stuff like that.
Anyways, we can talk more about that later. Again, when we're not being recorded. So one of the important parts about regular expressions, and the reason why we're talking about them in context of deterministic finite automata and non-deterministic finite automata, is that it is possible to take a regular expression and turn it into a deterministic finite automata. And this is, I mentioned, the full-blown interview question that you all get. Show me the process for taking a regular expression and turning it into a minimized DFA. Now we talked last time about how you turn an NFA into a DFA. So guess what part we're going to talk about today? How to turn a DFA into an NFA. And then using the process we covered last class, you can turn that NFA into a DFA. And using a process we'll talk about in the future, you can turn that DFA into a minimal DFA. Everyone cool with that? So, remember that we had 4 rules for for regular expressions. So the way to convert a regular expression into a DFA is to show that how each of those 4 rules map to an NFA. And I'm doing an NFA instead of a DFA because it'll become apparent very quickly that if you were to try and directly take a regular expression and turn it into a DFA, your life would become an unmitigated hell. Now, there are some things that are very easy to do, and you can eyeball some of them. But it's generally going to be a lot easier to go through the whole process. So, step 1. the base case. This is so easy that I always debate every year of putting it up on a slide, but I feel like I should for the sake of completeness. Which is that when we have, how do we take a single character and turn it into into an NFA? Well, that's really easy. You have a start state, it accepts the single character, and it moves to an accept state. Huzzah! Problem solved. Next is concatenation. Now I want to point something out here. I am writing this weird notation in here. This is to denote some shit happens in here. This is saying, suppose you have a regular expression A, or a subpart of a regular expression A. You have another one over here, B. And then you want to concatenate the two together. I'm not saying literally write this. In fact, never do. But this is saying your regular expression starts at some place and it ends at some place. And you want to concatenate that with another one that starts at some place and ends at another place. How do you do that? Well, you take those and you merge. You say the end state over here is now the start state over there, and you merge the two together. So, this is again going to look very silly when we talk about, so suppose I want to write a DFA for the regular expression AB. If I'm being literal about going through this whole process, and again, if you're writing a program about this, you still have to go through this whole process. Even though you can eyeball it, you'd still have to write these. So you'd say, okay, let's make the two NFAs for them. So, that's my NFA that accepts A, my NFA that accepts B. What's my NFA that accepts AB? Like so. Now, if I wanted to make something that was A, B, C, D, I'm not going to write out C, D, because again, that becomes silly. I would have another NFA for that. I would merge those, and I would get A, B, C, D. Nope. Never cool with that? Now again, technically these are DFAs as well. There's nothing really special about them, except they are DFAs as well, but they're more NFAs. Okay, everyone cool with that before we go on to the interesting parts? Okay, so let's talk about alternation. And again, I'm writing AB here to denote some general previous NFA regular expression or one up there. Now this is where you start needing the NFA-ness of it. Because if I were to say AB, and I'll write parentheses here to be clear, AB or CD, what is the NFA that will recognize that? The NFA that will recognize that is you take the NFA you had on the top, draw that out, take the NFA you had on the bottom, you have in the second half, draw that out, create a common start state for both of them that has epsilon transitions to the start states of the two previous ones. And then to concluding, you have epsilon transitions from the end of them to the new. Math professors beat the hell out of their markers.
That's why all the markers are straight.
I know.
So you start collecting it on.
One chalkboards.
They should hang them up on trophy cases over their mantles. Okay, does this make sense? Okay, let's get to the key star because this is the crazy one. It's madness.
Okay. Could you, from the transfer, like B where it's going to a node, could you just make like B and D point to the same place and skip the epsilon? Or
You could, but that would F you for later on.
okay.
The reason why you don't do that is because it's actually easier to have the epsilon transitions in here because when you start merging these together and you start incorporating with these, it becomes a lot easier to keep them all separate. Yeah, there are shortcuts, and this is why the first step is take it to your concern right now is not taking it to a minimal DFA, it's taking it to a DFA. And then once you turn it into a DFA, keeping this process makes it so much easier. And you can, what makes it nice is when you double check your work, if you don't physically see structures like this in your thing, you're like, well, I've messed up somewhere. Because you draw them out all basically the same way. So you can sort of scan and be like, okay, yeah, generally here's the different parts in there. You can check and make sure your thing is done correctly, and then you turn it to the minimal DFA. And so for racking up partial credit, if you've done all of this, you can check on your test your work to make sure you've done it all correctly very easily. And then when you eventually minimize it, if you make a mistake in the minimization process, and the minimization process is actually far more complicated than anything else in here, or the transformation to the DFA, it's easier to spot those mistakes along the way. So, okay, so this is the OR part. Now the Keen Start, I really want, again, I'm making my disclosure about this, because in previous years I've actually gotten this back on the test. I will write a frowny face on your test if you do that. A frowny face sticker, put that on there. I do not have frowny face stickers, I'm too cheap to buy them. I would if I did. Just know that. I'll give you a judging look whenever I see that on my face.
What you could do is you could go outside and find a little seed case that gets stuck to people's clothing, and then put a frowning face on that.
Yeah, and just stick it right on the paper and be like, no, it's not acceptable. Rub this on your clothes and have it issue on the inside for the rest of the day. That's what I think about that. So, what is interesting about this is you actually add a lot of work on here. Remember, it's 0 or more repetitions. So we have a start state that begins with, it goes to an epsilon. That takes you to your A. In here, you can repeat that as many times as you want, and then you epsilon out to the end. Alternatively, you could do 0 and skip over the whole end of the thing. Now, Noah, in relation to your last question, and I know you haven't asked this, but since you asked the last one about how to make it shorter, there's sort of a question of, well, why have this last step at all? Why not just make it start, except, and then have an epsilon and an epsilon loop? The reason why you don't want to do that is because that actually creates a pretty messy NFA. Because what happens in that case? Well, now you always have those epsilons circling forever. And so technically that will work, but if you were to try and programmatically go through that NFA, it would break because it would have an infinite loop in it. And you're infinitely able to parse additional characters. And so one of the things that sort of, it's not illegal, but it's sort of it's not an unspoken rule because I'm speaking it. An unwritten rule about NFAs is you never want to have loops of epsilons. Because loops of epsilons mean that you can keep on going without absorbing a character, you can just keep on moving in those states, changing between states forever. And that's a bad thing. It also complicates your process of turning it into a DFA. Because if you're following that process literally, it becomes very complicated. You notice in here, you can get a lot of jumps with epsilons for free, but you can never go back to your original state via epsilon transitions. One epsilon transition here will take you to this point, or one will take you to the end. You can never get back to the start once you've left it. Similarly, the only way to get back to here is to have actually parsed through the characters in A, and then taken you back along that path. Does that make sense? So that's the reason why we separate. It also makes the transformation process to a DFA a lot easier. So if we were to now have, now let's make it so that we have that. 0 or more repetitions of A, B, or C, D. Okay? Well, I'm going to be super lazy here. I have my A, B, C, D, DFA, NFA here. So I'll create my start state here, have my epsilon there. You are now no longer going to be you're now no longer going to be in accept state. You're instead going to be transitioned to an epsilon, which is the accept state. I will have a transition back to here, that's epsilon, and a transition here, which is epsilon. Do these four rules make sense? Any questions about it?
How would you do more than one? Like, can you do, for that one, can you do more than one character?
Yes.
Same thing, like,
Yeah, so let's go through this and let's parse A, C.
well, I mean, of like the same character.
What? Oh, so you could, so in this you can do, sorry, AC wouldn't work. You can do AB, AB, AC. Oh, sorry, not AC. CD. You always have to do, because it's ORs on either of those, so you always have to do them in pairs. So this would be a valid syntax. And so if you were to come through here, start epsilon. Now you can epsilon either way. Conveniently, I'm going to go the correct way. And I would go A, B, epsilon, swing back here, A, B, epsilon, C, D, epsilon, accept.
What if you have AA?
AA, that'd fail. AA would fail because what would happen here is you go A, where do I go from here? Blow up. Here's an interesting one. A, B, C. Succeed or fail?
Succeed.
Wait, let's take a survey on this. There's succeed, fail. Fail is right. So here's the part that I'm sort of tricked you guys up. Is you go A, B, here, and you kind of thought, oh, you can just chill out here, right? No, there's still a C character. That C character has to be parsed. And so you can try, so if you were to take the epsilon transition, here, you're like, C character, can't go anywhere from there, fail. C character from here can go there, but then you're stuck in a non-accept state. And so that's, it leaves you hanging in that state. That's the only place you could go, and that's not an accept state, so you fail.
Only one state that I succeed or succeed.
When it's finished. And so you can get here, but that's actually, remember, there's the unspoken rule that this actually has a connection here to a state which loops forever. And so that's where it would parse, is because you have to go through the whole string. And that's the reason why I chose this, because it's a super tricky one, which absolutely will be on the exam. Does that make sense, though? And looking at this, and so also when you get in this situation and you have the regular expression, look back at it and be like, wait, ABC shouldn't work here, because it either has to be AB or CD and 0 more repetitions of that. So if it looks like, if it succeeds down here but fails up here, then you've done something wrong. And it's a great, great, great way to double check your work. It's really quick and can be done with minimal time commitment. Just saying.
Is there any way you could use the clean closure in order to ensure that you can have A, B, C?
Well, it's a different language then. You could do that, it's just a different regular expression.
Okay.
But with this regular expression does not allow ABC. Any questions about that so far? Again, you have to parse all of the characters. So, let's minimize the bad boy. And that's not minimize it, let's turn it into an NFA. A DFA. Bleh. Okay. So, I'm going to write just 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Know that those are actually Q sub 0, Q sub 1, Q sub, but we discussed last time that me writing out Q sub 0 is not a good idea because no one can read my handwriting. So, what is our start state? So what's our start state in our DFA?
So 0 and 9.
2, 1.
And
what?
1,
and
2,
and
3.
So.
years. This is why I did this. Your start state is 0, and all of the places you can go via epsilon transitions from 0. Well, where can you go via epsilon transition? 1 and 9. Where else? Well, 1 can epsilon transition to 2 and 3. So our start state is 0, 1, 2, 3, 9. Yay! And that's our start state. It's also an accept state, because 9's in there. And this makes sense, because does this accept epsilon? Yep, that's a perfectly valid string in that syntax. So that's good to go. All right. So where do we go next? On A, so we have 4 letters in our alphabet: A, B, and C, and D. On A, where do we go? Yep, we go to 4. Can we go anywhere else? No. On B, where do we go?
6.
No, we actually go nowhere. 2, 3, 1. None of those states do anything with B. So B takes you to that frowning face place that we talked about sticking to your clothes, which is more accurately the infinite repeat state, or null set if you want to be all nice and set theoretical about it. Okay, C.
5.
Yep. D. Yeah, it takes you to the frowning face. Not 5. D. Alright, where does 4 take you? Now I'm going to leave off the ones that are stupid, so I'm going to stop talking about A. Like, where does 4 take you on A? It takes you to the empty set. Where does it take you on D? Empty set. Where does it take you on C? I'm going to leave this off from now on. But know that they're in your heart. So where does 4 takes you on B?
6.
And?
8.
And? 9, and?
1.
Except state. Alright, where does 5 take you? Sorry, 5 take you on D.
Don't they also take you to 3 and 2?
Oh, they do, sorry. Yep. 2, 3. Good catch. That will be important in the very near future. So on D, where does that take you from state 5? 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3. Notice that these are different states, even though they're very, very similar. Because that's 7 and that's 6, even though the rest of them are the same. Okay, so where does this state take you on A?
To 4.
To 4. Where does it take you on B? Yeah, it takes you to empty set. So B and D both take you to the empty set there. And then on C, it takes you to 5. Yep. Now over here, where does this take you on A?
To 4.
Yep. And then empty set on B and D, and then 5 on D. 5 on C, yeah. wrote a 5 on there instead of a C. This make sense? All right. Any questions about this before I go on?
We're doing like the test. What do you want us to have empty set?
You can omit empty set. I put it up here just for illustrative purposes, but no, you can omit it.
Are players gonna want us to be neater about it than that?
What do you mean?
That's kind of not the most easy thing on the eyes, that whole NFA there.
Wait, so who was going to want you to be neater than that?
I'm assuming that when the employer wants me to actually show my knowledge of computation, they're gonna dock points if I'm not neat.
Sorry. The idea of an interviewer docking points because you have bad handwriting is really funny.
These are the same people with poor hygiene.
Yeah, these are the same. Not all of them, just a lot of them. No, this would be acceptable. In fact, I mean, you can certainly I'm certainly being a little laid back about it, but your interviewer isn't going to be at the back of the room. They're going to be right here staring at you, judging you constantly. So they'll be right up here being, judging you so harshly. So yeah, no, you don't mean this is technically accurate, and that's what they want to see. The fact that you have bad handwriting only means that you are a CS major,
Or a doctor.
or a doctor. Though I'm married to a doctor, and I will tell you which of us has worse handwriting. Me. Oh, I remember my discrete math class where I was handed back my assignment and was told I had the worst handwriting he had ever seen. And then my friend was laughing hysterically at me, and he was like, "Don't get too cocky, because you have the second worst." And he's like, "But I don't have the worst. I win." LaTeX became my friend shortly thereafter. So here's a whole bunch of examples that y'all can work on your own. I don't really want to go through them. I feel like we've done a pretty comprehensive design. Here's some more examples. So let's talk about minimizing via partitioning. So to minimizing process is a little bit iffier. There's actually different approaches for minimizing. What we do is start off with what is the smallest. You start off with the smallest possible partitioning of the system. You say, okay, let's divide the states into start states, accept states, and non-accept states. Because you know that if you have accept states and non-accept states in your systems, then you're going to need at least 2 states. I don't care how complicated it's going to be, you have 2 states which are fundamentally different, accepts and non-accepts. Now, if you were to have something like this, how many states are you going to need to represent that? Just 1. Because you only have accept states. Similarly, if you were to have that, how many are you going to need? Just 1, because you have just 1 type of state. But as soon as you start having accept states and non-accept states, you will need at least 2 different types. You'll need at least 2 different states. So you start off with the small number of states and keep on saying, does this work? And basically, you keep on repeating this process until, by adding the smallest number of new states each time, until eventually you get a correct state. And the trick here is, how do you add those new states? So let's go through this example. We have a start state, we have 0, 1, AC, AB, CD. So we start off with our minimal partitioning. Our minimal partitioning is like so. Divide them into start states and accept states, which I am calling state x1 and state x2. I use the x here because it's awesome. X is a cool letter. It's easier to number these rather than trying to be creative about them. I like using x for no real reason. Mathematicians like x. I don't know. It doesn't look like a number. So if we were to try this partitioning, this has a state. The start state is start state. C and D are also the same states. So we say, suppose we only had 2 states in our system. Would we have the same behavior that we had in this original thing when we had 5 states? So let's check it out. On start state, if you were in start and you were to go into 0, which new state would you go to? You go to x2, because you go to A. If you were in the start state and you tried going on 1, where would you go to? x2. If you were in state A, where would you go on 0? x2, and then x1, and then x2, and x1 for B as well. Here we run into a problem, which is that C and D will take you to x2, x1, and x2, x1. That's different than that. Because that is different than those two, it means this needs to be a new state. Because if they all had the same behavior and all took you to the same state, you're like, hey, everything is taking you to the same state, so it means they can all be lumped together. However, because that's taking you to x2, x2, and that's taking you to x2, x1, that's taking you to x2, 1, we know these two need to be a different state from that one. Is everyone cool with that so far? So we try a new partitioning.
So why is C the x1?
Because they're not accept states. So that's the initial partitioning we say. It's like, let's just see if this can be represented by 2 states. Maybe it can. Who knows? Let's find out. So we try new partitioning now. We know that start has to be a new state. So let's try a new partitioning where now the start state is x1. The accept states are still x2. And the C and D are now in state x3. So now we try, well, start state is the only thing in it. So we know that is it going to behave the same as every other state in itself? Yes, because there's only one thing in it. So, but it goes to x2, x2. On A, where does it go on 0?
x2.
It goes to x2. On 1, where does it go? x3. B goes to x0 on x2 on 0, and it goes to 1 on x3, so that's looking good. C will go to x2 on 0, and it will go to x3 on 1. D goes to x2 on 0, and x3 on 1. Now, all x1 states go to the same place, all x2 states go to the same place, and all x3 states go to the same place. So it means that we have found a stable partitioning. So this means that we can rewrite our DFA like so. Oh, I made a coloring mistake. No, those should both be pink. I'll change those after the fact. No, those are really x3. And so this represents the minimal DFA for that. So let's minimize this bad boy. Everyone good? Everyone ready? Okay. So I'm going to take out the null state here for clarity. And also for further clarity, I'm just going to, instead of having the state be 0, 9, 1, 2, 3, it's a lot of numbers to write out. I'm going to just erase these and renumber them. Zero, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So, first thing we do is we partition the state into accept states and non-accept states. So, we'll say x1 is equal to all of our accept states, 0, 3, and 4. And x2 is equal to our non-accept states, 1, and 2. Okay? So, we say for state 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, where does 0 go on A? it goes to 1, which is part of x2. Where does it go on B? It goes to empty set, which I'll just write with a dash. Or I could write as an empty set, whichever way floats your boat. We're running out of time, so I'll have to do this quickly. C goes to x2, D goes to empty set 1, on A goes to empty set, in fact, and on B it goes to x1, empty set, 2 goes to empty set, x1, empty set, 3 goes to x2, empty set, x2, empty set, x2, empty set, x2, empty set. This, and this, all the x1 states are behaving the same. x2 is not. So we need to break up x2 into 2 different states. So we'll try a new partitioning now. x2 is equal to 1, x3 is equal to 2. Now, if you're doing this in the test, I would not erase this. I'm going to erase key ones in here because I'm going to erase all the non-empty sets because we're running short on time. Normally, I would write this out, but we're out of time. Okay, 0 on A, where does it go?
x2.
x2, and this goes to x3, x1, x1, x2, x3, x2, x3, x1, all of them go to the same location. x2, that goes to the same location. x3 goes to the same location. They both go internally, they're all the same, there's only one element in there. They trivially go to the same one. That means we can take this chart and now create a minimal DFA for it. x1, x2, x3, there we go. That's the minimal DFA. It wasn't quite on there. We'll go through another example of this next class that's not rushed. All right. Cool. Awesome.